Hi, everyone. Welcome to Sister Science Stories. Chelsey and I are back with a
Mm.
conversation that follows from all the previous podcast conversations that her and I have been having. Today, I want to talk with Chelsey about microaggressions. We want to sort of start to give words, names, sensations, feelings to the idea that society, the systems that we live in, um, have microaggressions, that the relationships, the people close to us, our communities, we feel microaggressions there. The voice in our own heads feeds us microaggressions. And this, I'm going to put in quotes, the they that we're trying to appease, avoid judgment from. And how we experience these microaggressions is sometimes just feeling like we need to behave a certain way in order to fit in, or feeling like how we are as people isn't being recognized, validated, and so we need to change and who we are. Um, Chelsey, can you help us explain that term microaggressions? Give it a more filled out explanation.
I want to say it's anything that stops you from being who you are and living your truth, whether it's outside of you or inside of you.
Blocks and obstacles, stories, patterns, limiting beliefs, all those sorts of things.
Yeah.
Yeah. And we've talked about some of the big things, right? That have
hmm
put us into a little box and where we kind of live and feel safe. And today we're sort of talking about those really tiny things that we feel as just sort of little pokes, like,
hmm
that's not something, that's not a behavior that I'm happy with. We somehow hear that from external sources or from internal sources, and it nudges us to, I'm going to say, not align with our truth and our own reality, our own wisdom, and it asks us to show up somehow differently.
Especially when we're trying to grow or we're moving into maybe a more vulnerable version of ourselves, aka kind of shedding that conditioning and stepping into more of who you know you are and want to be and kind of letting that mask fall, right?
So I guess that's where our conversation starts today, is that as we grow, we notice that we are still subject to this sort of microaggression. And every time we sense it, feel it, experience it, we have to make a choice about what that means for us trying to stand in our truth.
Mhm.
And how do we do that in the presence of um, an external or internal noise, but microaggression that is sort of dismissive, belittling, denying, challenging us on what we are trying to do in standing in and acknowledging our own truth.
Yeah, I want to say like a really good example of how this shows up commonly is when someone tries to get healthy, whether that's, losing weight or starting to go to the gym and be active. Often, if their partner is not already doing those things, they can like do little microaggressions like, oh, here's some treats for you, or here's a glass of wine, or let's just rest and snuggle and watch this movie. And it can be nice aggressions.
Mhm.
Those are pretty nice. Or it can be like a dirty look, or they start talking about how bad they feel about themselves when you do that good, healthy thing, right?
Yeah. Or the statement like, wouldn't it be nice to have that kind of time? Or wouldn't it be nice?
I
Yeah. Yeah. It's so it comes from and I think those are ones where sometimes having the bravery to be able to say out loud, hey, this is what I'm doing, hey, this is why I'm doing it, and hey, it would be really nice if I could get your support in this way. And I do feel like learning how to have those conversations with those in your direct, home, household,
Mhm.
community, workplace, they're really vulnerable conversations, but they're valuable.
But I want to say too, like sometimes conversations can't cure that problem. You know, if someone's feeling a little immature and like, oh, their nose is at a joint because you're doing something good for yourself and they're not really doing anything good for themselves in that moment, like don't underestimate
Mhm.
how petty people can be. But does that mean that you need to stop doing what you're doing? Yes, it's a little added resistance on top of the new resistance of doing something new and trying to start a habit and being consistent with it, which is already challenging. But should you let that stop you? Absolutely not.
Mhm.
Absolutely not. And I want to say sometimes these are telltale signs that you're in the right direction, doing exactly what you need to do. And it isn't permanent either. Often it takes time for you to establish that new cycle and for them to realize, oh, you're not going to leave them or abandon them. It's not about that at all, right? And it's not about you making them feel bad about themselves because that's also a lie too. How can you taking care of yourself make someone feel bad about themselves? That's
Mhm.
also a total lie that they have told themselves and then told you, kind of
Yeah.
like crabs in a bucket trying to pull you down, right?
Yeah. Yeah. And so I think that yeah, that whole idea of this isn't going to stop. And when you're talking, I'm also realizing that I can be guilty of that. I can show up for other people as my
Mhm.
highest self, and I can show
Mhm.
up for them and be really supportive and really encouraging. But I can also show up as that petty self who my
Mhm.
own wound shows up, and then I'm the one who's firing that microaggression out.
Yeah, we've all been there. We're both guilty and innocent.
Yeah, isn't it true? Yeah. I do have a story that I want to share around how I feel like this shows up in us sometimes. I have a woman who's really close and dear to me who was feeling really heavy in her heart, and it was going on for a while, and she didn't know what it was. It was pain, it was heaviness, it was just like an achiness on her left side body that was kind of worrying because it was new to her.
Mhm.
And the day that she felt quite woozy, her husband was gone to work and her kids were at school and she was alone. And she's like, ah, God, like, I don't feel good. Like, I get dizzy when I stand. Took herself to urgent care. Urgent care was like, yep, something's up here. Your blood pressure's going up and down and change. It's very variable, changing a lot right now. Put her in an ambulance, took her to the hospital. Meanwhile, she's connecting with her community. She's asking her husband to kind of swing by and help her, like be with her. She's setting up her people to grab her kids from school and come and take care of them for the evening, whatever they need. And the system starts sort of checking her out. And 10 hours later, lots of different tests and things like that. There's nothing wrong. And I want to be clear that at no point was anyone patronizing or dismissive in their outward words. Everyone was sort of like we just can't find anything. We are not going to deny that your blood pressure is some like unusual and there's something going on here, but there's no clot, there's no heart issue that we can find. And so sort of leaves the experience without a diagnosis. And then her words as she's explaining to her husband, the people who took care of her kids and had a little bit of worry about her, that she just feels silly, that she just feels like she overreacted. And that sort of thing happens to us more and more because we're in a belief structure that says if there's not a answer, then you must have made it up. If the system can't find the problem, then maybe the problem's you. And I don't know where this belief system comes from, where sometimes it's your own voice. No one told her she was silly. No one told her she was overreacting, but she left that experience with that sensation in her body. And those were the words she used when she told me the story. And it broke my heart that those it's just the tiny ways that we've been taught to fall into line and that we it culminates with us being in denial of our own truth. So all of a sudden that truth that I don't feel right and I think I might need to go get checked out. She's in doubt of that truth, that urge, that urgency that said, you should go and be and just get this checked.
First, I want to say if your blood pressure is moving up and down at a pretty rapid rate, that is not a nothing problem.
No.
It's not a nothing problem. Just because they didn't find a diagnosis does not mean that there's not something wrong. And I feel like that is definitely something where your life could be at risk and is absolutely worthy of going to the hospital. Whether they find something or not is not your problem. There
Yeah.
is something wrong.
Yeah.
Um, and uh, it breaks my heart, and I see this time and time again in my own like massage practice with people who tell me about their medical experiences where they were invalidated or they weren't getting the help they needed, and then over like many years they finally got what they needed, and it was like a really big problem. It was a really big problem. So unfortunately, when we don't feel the weight of our own value and the ability to speak up on your own behalf, you don't get the attention that you need and deserve, that everyone needs and deserves.
Yeah, you don't get it and you don't ask for it.
And you don't ask for it. And we can blame it on like, the medical system and all the other people, but it at first starts with you. Like you need to be brave enough to speak up and recognize your value. And we can blame our family for not valuing us, but that first starts with ourself. And we really learn these super hard lessons when our body starts to fail us, or we feel like it's outside of our control and our health starts to go downhill. And our health typically only does this when we're not listening some really vital clues that our body's telling us. We're ignoring them and we're overriding them, and we're, overdoing or working or giving, and we're not nurturing ourselves and fulfilling our own needs or asking for our needs to be fulfilled by others.
Yeah. I just have tingles when you say that. There is a capacity in us to be with that state of our own truth, and learning how to do that is kind of it's a big step to take.
It's scary. It's super scary, especially when it comes to our body and we feel like it's failing us, and we feel like we feel really vulnerable in our support systems, like to ask your husband to take 2 hours off work to take you to the hospital. When
Mhm.
you think you're going to die, that's not much. It's not
Yeah,
much.
yeah,
And so when you don't feel like that support is there for you, that's a big problem.
yeah, yeah.
And so, how do you, when you're in this weak, vulnerable place, how do you start stepping in to your own value and power? Well, it takes looking at the shadow, like, how did you get here in the first place? You need to evaluate what's taken place beforehand where you feel this lack of support. And sometimes this is a lifelong pattern, and sometimes it's not. Sometimes it's something that has taken the course of a few years or even 5 to 10 years, to
Mhm.
get here. But it's up to you to be curious
Yeah.
and to do your own research into yourself
Yeah.
to figure that out.
So you sometimes reference Katie Byron and she the stuff she does, she calls it the work. But
Mhm.
one of the first questions she asks is this true? So like you said, if you're, you called your husband because you thought you were going to the hospital because something was really wrong, and then you leave the
Mhm.
hospital and nothing's in quotes really wrong, and all of a sudden you're feeling just a little bit like uncomfortable that you disrupted a day for, I'm going to put in quotes again, nothing. And you have to check in with yourself around, is it true that that's what this person's feeling? Because maybe it's not. Maybe that person's like, oh my God, of course, you need to call me. Like, I'm there for you. And it's
Mhm.
a
Mhm.
story of I've created, I created this problem, or I disrupted their day, or they're going to be resentful. And maybe none of it's true, but
Mhm.
your own
Mhm.
patterns, your own story, your own history. And that's where the microaggressions are just coming from your own voice.
Mhm. So I want to say, like, there is. the microaggressions of like what you might have felt at the hospital, like them invalidating you, saying like we have nothing to diagnose, everything's coming out good. And then there's the lack of support, which may or may not be true. Sometimes it is true. Sometimes family members are very stingy in these worst case scenarios, but sometimes it's not. And sometimes they're absolutely there for you, but they might not just verbally show it, right? So in the work, it's kind of figuring that out. So first you're gonna like write down the scenario, like what happened? What did they say? How did it make you feel? And then you get down to the is it true? And this is where doing the work with Byron Katie is really good to do with a professional. There's a number of like professionals that do the work that walk you through it. And then when we get to the is it true part, it's really important to have that witness, because when you just do it yourself, you can be like, yes, they screwed me over. They were so rude and inconsiderate, or I felt just
Yeah.
so alone or whatever.
Yes.
But the truth is, like, maybe that did happen, but you absolutely do not know what they're thinking in their head. And also you made up what they're thinking in your head, like in the story of your mind. And we all do this, right? And so you can never actually know for sure if it's true. And so the process of doing it allows you to be a victim for a second, list everything out, be petty, be super
Mhm.
petty. But then when it comes to the is it true, it's now taking your own responsibility of honoring that you actually cannot know what they're thinking, what's going on in the background of their own minds, about behind their own words. And you have to let that go to step into your own self empowerment and kind of focus on where you want to go and where you want to grow. And in this case, I would say we're wanting to grow into that value of self. And so there's probably a number of these things that you're going to have to do over time. You're not going to do it in one day. That's just way too much. But over time, being curious and stepping into this work will start to peel back the layers of the belief systems that you have and you've created, and you get to see what is actually true and what is not. And a lot of it is just all fake. It's just stories.
The
Just
stories.
stories.
So I want to it's almost like you brought us to two different ways that we react to the microaggression then. So one way
Mhm.
is that it comes in and we're being like denied and told that we're wrong or something. And we get that victim mode, like no
Mhm.
one's listening. I'm right. They're not taking care of me. And you just take that microaggression as another proof, right? If we're
Yeah.
confident bias,
Yeah.
take it as another proof that we are not being heard, that our truth is not accepted in this world, and we build our victim story.
And this is the reactive victim,
Yes. And then the
right?
other one is to come back and be like, oh, I better shut that down. I better not behave that way. I better not, you deny your own
Which
truth.
is the repressive victim. So both are
Okay.
victims. One
Okay.
is reactive, which comes out with anger. The other is push it down, pretend it didn't happen, don't make a fuss, don't use your voice.
Are you
I
talking
was
about
in the
fight or
wrong, taking
flight?
100% responsibility, which
Yes.
never is true. Like it's 50-50 in the work, always. But when you're doing the work, you're really working only on your part. So you can acknowledge the other person's part, but really you're only taking responsibility for your own actions. And in the repressive victim mentality, you actually have to bump the responsibility on the other person too. But sometimes that means you have to now use your voice. You can't repress it anymore. And that's a big ask for someone who's been in a very vulnerable position for a long time.
Yeah. Wow. Okay. Thank you for bringing good definitions around those two reactions. And so the value of self then is kind of between those two extremes. So it's like you're trying to find this sweet spot between reaction. And I think about stress response, fight, flight,
Mhm.
on,
Yeah,
free, right?
totally. Those are
So
all of
like
them.
watch your stress response to that microaggression. And maybe even in that stress response, you start to see your own pattern.
Mhm. Mhm.
Yeah.
Mhm. And as you do more and more of the work, when you're working with certain situations or feelings, you see your pattern. And that's why it's really important to do it over time. You see your pattern repeat itself. And the truth is, like, we're all human beings. We're never going to just arrive at this perfect moment where nothing ever happens in our life. Okay. So forget that. But you can get it to a place where you're more balanced. And when problems arise, you can deal with them and you can overcome them,
Yeah.
right? Until the next problem arises. Because let's
Mm.
just also be honest, life would be really boring if nothing ever happened.
Yeah. Yeah. I think one thing that's starting to highlight this victim reaction and repressive victims is that we are starting to notice that we're not wrong. Like our truth inside of us isn't wrong, that there's something in
Hmm.
our external world that's not working right anymore. And so
Hmm.
it's bringing us back more and more to the idea that I'm not wrong here, but we
Hmm.
don't know what to do about it because it feels like we've got two choices. One choice is to go along with status quo and I guess be that repressive one, or
Hmm.
to fight and fighting against what, against how, to what end, with what goal. Like the fight almost starts to feel um, redundant. It starts to feel like a waste of energy. So it's like, okay, I've got these two things. I don't know what that third way looks like. The value of self. Like, how do I honor self when my truth isn't reflected back to me in my community and my systems in the ways that this world works around me. But I don't know necessarily what if I was going to make a choice. What is the choice? Because it's not like there's this sitting over here waiting for us to just choose me and life will be perfect.
Okay, exactly. So what happens when you're doing the work, whether it's your part or someone else's part, it all comes down to needs. Okay. If you're a repressive person, you never either act on your fulfilling your own needs or ask for others to help you fulfill your needs. Usually the problem is with asking, but also stepping up and doing it yourself. It's like both.
Okay.
For the reactive person, typically you're projecting on the other person all responsibility and you're asking them to do all of the work for you. Not always, but typically, or you feel like you didn't have a part in it.
Mm.
These are, I'm going to just do black and white terms
Yeah,
because it
yeah.
just makes it a
Yeah,
little bit
keep it
easier,
simple.
right? There's always gray area. Okay. So, both people have needs in a situation. And when you're resolving conflict, it's really important to know where this person sits in your values of how important they are in your life. Is this a person that you want to resolve conflict with and can resolve conflict with? Because the truth is, not all people are willing to be honest and sit with the hard things and resolve them.
Mhm.
Um, and so if they're not like a really important person, um, you don't have to put this like high on your list, right? Like you can have a conversation always with anyone, but you can only choose how you act and respond. You cannot choose how they act and respond. So when you do the work, you find out your needs. What do you need?
Yeah.
Can you fulfill it yourself? Do you need someone else to help you fulfill it? Because the truth is, we're not meant to just be lonely people that only fulfill our own needs. We are meant to be in relationship with people and in community with others. And so, depending on the hierarchy of where they fit in your life, like, are they your partner? That's a pretty important person. You'll definitely want to resolve that. You know, are they someone who's just a petty tyrant that doesn't really need to be in your life? Maybe it's time to set a boundary and be like, maybe they don't need to be in your life, you know?
Yeah. Yeah.
That obviously isn't for everybody, but the hierarchy of how important they are is like how you deal with the conflict. And then when you come down to your needs, how can you boil them down as simply as possible? And how can you ask for them in a way that's very clear and calm? Because
Yeah.
when we know our needs, we typically only react because we've gone so long without fulfilling them that it's like at a desperate point and we are done. And women really have a bad problem of assuming that people know what our needs are because we are really good at doing that for other people.
Yeah.
But the truth is, they don't.
Yeah.
They
And getting
don't.
really resentful when our needs aren't met because someone
Mhm,
else isn't able to read between the lines as to what we need.
mhm,
Yeah. And using our voice has is something that we've been afraid to do because
mhm.
it feels like we are bucking the system a little bit. We're pushing against a boundary, and sometimes it's very afraid to ask for your needs to be met because you're risking that the other person says,
No.
I'm not interested in meeting that need. Yeah. And so there's a level of vulnerability and risk that comes with learning to communicate your needs.
Mhm,
Yeah. The one thing I will say, and I'm going to maybe go back to my hospital example for a second, is that the hospital can't diagnose something, but you can feel it in your body. You
mhm,
can feel your body saying to you, something's not right. I want to say Western medicine can diagnose something at what Ayurveda says is the fourth stage of disease. So if you
mhm,
come home
mhm.
from
It's so
that,
true.
yeah, like if you come home from that sort of experience and Western medicine can't diagnose it, give yourself a check mark because you caught it in stage one, two, or three, which is just
Mhm,
like it's accumulating in your body, causing some minor symptoms, or it's starting to be a little bit aggravating, but it's not manifesting in disease yet. It's still undiagnosable. It's still just disruption in your body. It's not diagnosable disease. So that part's good. So, and you're feeling it, you're listening to it, you're responding to it. So it's you starting to have a new relationship to being in understanding the body symptoms. Can I say one more thing before I like ask you a question about it? Ayurveda also says that the first cause of disease is crimes against your own wisdom.
yes.
So you know what you should do and you don't do it. You know what you shouldn't do it and you do it anyway. So if we back out, then the microaggressions sometimes are coming from us doing crimes, committing crimes against our own knowing. Yeah.
This is so good.
It's
So I
crazy.
want to say this is where the conditioning forces come in, like around identities. And this goes for both sexes, whether you're male or female, right? But for women, because we're women, um, it's usually about being good, being polite, being kind, being of service, being loving, all these very like feminine, like boring qualities. Hate to say it. I hate to say it. Because like it's basically robbing us of our personalities and anything that exists outside of that, right? That's a big prison to live in, to be honest. That makes you like minimize your needs. Like, I don't need anything, but I'm going to serve you and I'm going to do everything I can to make your experience pleasant. And I'm not going to complain and I'm not going to get mad. Well, boy, does that rob you of your voice? Does that rob you of your wisdom? Does that rob you of your power? And does that ever take away from the human experience of what it really means to live in this world as a woman? Right?
Yeah.
So I want to say in general, we're all conditioned with this, whether we live by or not, doesn't matter. Okay. But want to say like for me, I lived by this for a long time and I got very, very sick. And people also abused and took advantage of me. And I had no voice in my mind to say no or no otherwise. And so it took me getting very ill with three small children, with a husband that traveled away, and with some family members who were saying some really ugly things to me day in, day out. and me trying to be as independent as possible to realize like I have to start taking care of my health or I'm going to die or my children aren't going to, I can't raise my children, you know? And it took a really long time to peel the layers back of what that was. And at first I went the medical route and they didn't really help me. And then I went the alternative medicine route, which it did help me, but it took a lot of different things over a long period of time, like 7 years, to kind of figure out the problem. And then another 15 years after that to realize that it really came down to living by this code of ethics that doesn't align with my own values and maybe my own sole purpose for this life that I had to shed. And that required me cutting out people. It required having very hard conversations with people about my needs. It required setting boundaries where there was a lot of microaggressions and standing in my power no matter what, which is not easy and not for the faint of heart. And I was able to regain my health and my voice and my power. And I want to say it's still an ongoing process, but it's not an easy journey. It's really not an easy journey. It requires a lot of work. It requires looking at a lot of belief systems and walking through them and walking through what you feel like is death. Because to disappoint people you love and what they believe to be true feels like dying
Yeah.
because you have to go against what they believe to honor yourself and honor your own truth. And it feels like letting them down and it feels like them not validating you because they're not.
Hmm.
But over time, you walk through the other side. And when those people stay and they actually see, oh, that wasn't so bad, or oh, you have a point there, you
Yeah.
know, you get to really expand into the foundation of who you are and who you're meant to be. But it's not easy. And
No.
it doesn't feel like you're getting this reward. No one's going to reward you and say great job because they have to, the version of you that they know has to die inside of them too, and that's very painful. And so when this new version of you, which really isn't a new version, it's really you just shedding things that don't belong to you, like they might not like all those parts, right? They might not.
I think it's interesting how you described that. It's like you took your truth, which is all of the ways that the physical symptoms are showing up in your body, and you banged on the door of like traditional medicine, and they were just like, "Man, I don't got like nothing. There's nothing wrong that we can find," kind of deal. So then you said you took it to like alternative medicine, and there was some things there. And I do think
Mhm.
that in alternative medicine, it can be its own set of stories and beliefs.
Oh yeah.
But also, it hopefully starts connecting us into that whole mind, body, spirit cannot be divided. So,
Hmm.
hopefully,
Hmm.
we step out of just physical dealing with physical into
Hmm.
we're going to do this a little bit more holistically and let that mind, body, spirit connection. So, that could be like you're knocking at the next door, and the next door is like still incomplete because the door really where you can have healing is the door to your own truth. And it's
Hmm.
not something that these modalities, all of them, Western medicine can be a modality
Hmm.
that's helpful.
Hmm. Hmm.
Alternative modalities can be modalities that are helpful. They can all somehow play a piece in your healing along the way. But in the end,
Yeah.
it's you standing almost in the eye of the storm because the
Hmm.
microaggressions are still flying at you from all the different stories around you. It's your ability to stand right there in the middle of your own truth and reconcile.
Yeah, and this is where like the physical, the psycho, emotional, and the spiritual, they all have to be addressed because it's not just one. One is empty without the other two. two is empty without the other one, right? Like you need all three, and we're not ready. You can't do that in a day. It takes time. It takes time. It
And
takes immersion.
what you described about your healing was you no longer committing crimes against your own wisdom.
Mhm.
It was you sort of like you said, I'm going to live by my truth. I'm going to communicate my truth. I'm going to set boundaries to protect my truth. And none of that was easy, but it led you
Mhm.
to wellness.
Yes, and I want to say it's a still a daily thing. Like I still fall into people pleasing all the time, but when I do and I get like an ick feeling in my body, because I am a slow processor, I really am. I do really love my people and I want to make them happy. But when all of a sudden my body's like something is not right there. That conversation or that word didn't feel right. Like I still have to go back. I have to reflect on that and see like what need do I feel is being like oppressed or I'm not getting that I need to either acknowledge myself or have a conversation about. And so it's still like it's not like I just arrived at this place and I don't have to do anything anymore. Life still lifes. Life is life in every day.
Life is
But
like,
it gets easier. It does get easier, and I have tools. I have tools, I have habits, I have patterns, and I'm building these really strong foundations in my relationships that didn't exist before because we were not brave enough to speak about these real things we were feeling inside.
so as you go through this healing journey, do you feel like sometimes that microaggression it'll kind of stab into you, and sometimes you feel like this trigger again? It's like, oh,
Mhm.
there's the trigger to
Yeah,
that
yeah.
nuanced body language or that phrase or that whatever it is. And sometimes you're just like, oh my gosh, that just bounced right off me, and a year ago I would have,
Mhm.
yeah.
Yeah, so you do develop a little bit thicker skin. And when it comes to the microaggressions of people you just don't care about, like a lot of people will project on you of who they think you are or like, "Ugh, I don't like that," or whatever. Honestly, you literally have to let it slide off your back. One, those people probably, especially when it's like in the external world and not people in your close circle, those people don't really matter. They're
Mhm.
not high in your important list and they don't know you.
Mhm.
They're just seeing something superficial and they're seeing whatever they make up in their mind, right?
Yeah.
So that is like way easier. Um, but I'm still human, and so if a lot of that is showing up in my life, usually that means I'm growing and
Mhm.
I'm moving into something that feels really uncomfortable and vulnerable for me. And I'm not comfortable there either. And so it's kind of like the awkward, like adolescent phase. Like you're a little awkward. People are like, that's awkward, you know?
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
it's just a phase. And so now I know it's a phase, but sometimes I do get upset about it. But I also know like that's part of being a human and growing is hard. Like when you think of crabs in a shell, like they have to like let go of that shell and be really vulnerable until they can grow that new exoskeleton. The same is true for us when we expand, it's just invisible, right? We just feel it on the inside. We're really vulnerable for a little bit, but then we start to get more and more comfortable in our own skin until we kind of move up to that next phase. If you choose to keep growing and expanding, because not everybody does.
Yeah. I do like the way you sort of framed it for us too, in that um, it's a practice. And when
Mhm.
you notice A, that you are triggered, or B, that A, I didn't get triggered, to take that back for some observation, to take that back to
Mhm.
just do some questioning, do some of Katie Byron's work around
Mhm.
seeing where you're at, seeing like, oh, I that threw me right back into the pain of that particular pattern, or I reacted to that the same way I would have a couple years ago, or oh, look, I didn't react. And just the practice of being witness to yourself. It
Mhm.
comes back.
Mhm.
I mean, yoga means union. Yoga means
Mhm.
wellness, health, congruence of that mind, body, soul. And when we feel that congruence of our mind, body, soul, is when we probably can let that microaggressions slide the most easily.
Hmm.
It's when we feel the most trusting in our own ability to let it slide. Yeah.
Yeah.
But it's a practice. We don't arrive here.
Yeah.
Like you said, we
We
have
don't arrive
to
here.
continue to practice it.
And I
Can,
want to say, like, do you want harmony in the external world more than you want harmony in the internal world? Because I find when we strive for that harmony in the external world by people pleasing and like maybe self-harming yourself by wearing the mask or whatever, um, even people in the external world don't really like that. They can kind of see it and be like, eh. So when you really focus on harmony on the inside and harmony, especially with the parts that are a little bit incongruent, that are a little bit opposite of each other, because we're this walking paradox, all of us, right? It just unites the humanness and the wholeness and the goodness inside of you, that like we can exist as all things, and we're not wrong for it and we're not bad for it. We're
yeah,
just human. We're just human.
thank you.
And when you can live from that place of not having to be perfect, um, and also not feeling like this really awful person, like it's a really good place to be. It's really centered.
So there's some sort of almost self-acknowledgement that there's always going to be a little bit of discord between our truth and the truth of the world around us, or the truth of other people, or and the goal of this human life is to live aligned in your own truth without causing damage as you go through the world.
I want to say there's no way to avoid causing damage. Like it's just going to happen. We're humans. We're going to cause damage. But and I don't think we're always going to be discordant either. But sometimes, especially in the growth phase, it does feel discordant for a while.
Yeah,
But when you get to that place where you feel really harmonized and united with all parts of yourself, the light and the shadow, you get to this place of equanimity. And when you get to the place of equanimity where you can be okay with the parts you want to shine brightest in the world, and also your big garbage bag of gunk of things you've done and all that, like, and know that you're just a human and you can forgive yourself. You can do that and extend that out to the world a lot easier. And when things are really volatile out there, um, you don't have to hold it in this place of like, extremes, like the world's going to hell and everything's like demonized, right? Like you can actually tap into that part that exists inside of you that's really good and whole, and you can start seeing that out in the world. And I feel like when we're in that place in our consciousness, it affects other people, and other people, by being in your presence, can do that too. You know, we're not gonna ever have this perfect world where everything's in balance and harmony, but we can bring it into greater harmony by starting with ourselves, and that can be our lasting impact.
yeah. And as we aren't as reactive to
Mhm.
microaggressions in our world, and we don't get triggered by them as much, they stop getting thrown at us. Because just like a little kid,
Mhm.
the point of the
Mhm.
tantrum is to get the reaction. Just like my cat, the point of annoying me is so that I will let her out or feed her. And so,
Hmm.
like, it's like the sometimes the point of the aggression is to get you to behave a certain way. And the more we don't fall in line with responding the way the aggression is intended to make us behave, maybe the less it will target us. And that, I don't know, the world keeps showing us again and again and again that the way to heal the world is to heal ourselves.
Mhm.
And just to come back again and again and again to,
Mhm.
how can I be more truthful to me? How can I be more honest to me? How can I show up in this world more authentically and brave? And I mean, like everything you've said, takes bravery, takes courage, takes constant self, like navel gazing, just like being in relationship with self and vulnerability. Yeah.
And being in balance, right? Like you don't have to focus on this all the time. I don't like the word constant because um it just feels aggressive in that like you always have to be in it. If you're in it too much, it's also not healthy. Like I think just having a small habit can do a lot of good, even if it's like 20 minutes 3 times a week, that can be enough to recognize what's going on the inside so you can act from a place of higher integrity.
Agree.
Because the world is asking us to do too much, and I feel like we should be doing less, um, but more that feels in line with us. Like I don't like the like million thing to do list because it can be overwhelming, and I don't want people to feel overwhelmed anymore. I want them to feel like this is achievable and something that anybody can do. And no matter where you are, you can start and you can feel successful in it. I
Yeah,
really want people to feel like it's okay to be a human. We don't have to be perfect machines.
I love it.
Yeah.
Mm. Thank you, Chelsea. I always feel like I don't know, when we hash something like this out, then there's a piece of clarity on the other side of it. And some of it has to do with maybe I don't need to do anything about this. I can just see it more clearly.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Thank you for that. Is there anything else you want to add?
Um, no, I feel like we covered a lot.
Yeah, me too. Me too.
Mhm.
Once again, thank you for being my partner in crime, hashing out these just quandaries, questions, little niggles that feel like I'm not understanding my own relationship to them or I'm watching my own reaction to them. And I love it how you can help bring clarity with me.
Well, thank you for having me. Love this.
Thank you so much.